think it's even going to be tougher than it was against Manchester United in that second half.
I think we need to make sure we contain their wide players.
I'm intrigued to see if Adama Traore is going to start this one.
Welcome to the first ever episode of the Pre-Match Pint with London Pride, our new weekly preview show. Basically, it's just me inviting some of my favourite people, some ex-pros, some experts, to come down, have a swig with me and talk about the upcoming fixture. And starting, of course, with Wolves on Saturday. And I'm delighted to say, joining me in this maiden show is Natalie, Sawyer and Rhys Weston. How are you both?
All good. Yeah, all good, thank you.
Now, Natalie, of course, you need no introduction. And Rhys, I'm not saying that you do, but obviously people will know you from your playing days for Cardiff, Wales, Premier League for Arsenal. But they've also probably seen you walking around the Brentford Community Stadium, very smartly dressed, the second best dressed man in the stadium, if you ask me. And they might not know the connection to the club. So, of course, you are their new sales manager for those of you that may be thinking, I know Rhys from his playing days, but why do I always see him at Brentford? So give us a bit of context. I'd also like to point out at this point, we would, of course, like to be doing this in person, but unfortunately, with what's going on, we're going to have to do it online. Although, last time I was in a pub with the two of you after a game, it's probably better that we are doing this online, to be 100%.
Fair. Tequila Roses may have come out, probably.
Exactly. I knew you were going to say that. It's probably a good time for me to also say, always drink responsibly. You don't need me to say that, but legally you do need me to say that. Right, niceties out the way. We are, of course, looking forward to the Wolves game, but it'd be remiss of us not to mention last night's game. Manchester United at home. Natalie, two cliches stand out straight away to me. Game of two halves. And if you don't take your chances at this level, you're going to get punished.
Yeah, perfectly summed up, really. What more do you want me to add to it? Yeah, it was, that first half was brilliant in terms of the aggressiveness that we showed, the fact that we wanted to take the game to Manchester United. We didn't want to make it comfortable for them at all. And yeah, we had so many chances, and how one of them didn't go in, I don't know, other than maybe David De Gea being brilliant in goal. It was a frustrating game in the end, I think it's fair to say. I don't think a 3-1 scoreline is really fair, if I'm honest, as a Brentford fan. But yeah, definitely a tale of two halves and lots to ponder about ahead of Wolves.
Yeah, we say this, and it was a great first half performance. Probably one of our better performances in recent months, to be fair, going that far back. Rhys, the classic thing is after a game like this, you go, we can take the positives from that first half performance. But you've been there in those games where you've played really well in the first half, maybe not got what you deserve from it come 90 minutes. So do players actually feel like that in the change room when it comes to the end of the game and they're sat there? Are they going, look, lads, we can take some positives here, or is the emotion different? Is it more of just you're gutted from what's happened in the game?
I think in the immediate aftermath, you're naturally disappointed. You've lost the game, so regardless of how well you've played in stages, you're going to be upset about it. But I think, waking up this morning, I think looking at, to Natalie's point, how aggressive Brentford were on the front foot. Again, like they were when the first 5 or 6 games during the campaign, taking people by surprise almost with their energy and their kind of guile and determination. But yeah, I think you have to look at the positives. There's been a couple of poor results of late, I think it's fair to say. But when you create that many chances against Manchester United, especially in open play, which was a key one for me, we're always a danger from set plays. That's a given. But the chances created on another day, we could have gone in 2 or 3 up at half time, and that is an issue of sorts. But from Thomas's perspective today, ahead of Wolves on Saturday, you've got to be saying to the guys, look, guys, you've created some great chances. Okay, the goals weren't great that we conceded, but there's enough there to certainly take a lot of positives going into the weekend, I think.
And going into that weekend then, right, so Rhys, again, I'm going to direct this at you because obviously you've been in these change rooms and you've been in these training grounds. When they've met up today, so what's Thomas going to be saying to the group?
I don't think he'll dwell. Thomas is a really positive character anyway. I don't think he'll be one for dwelling unnecessarily on the negative aspects of it. And I think the key to being to management at the top level is making sure your players recover quickly and they focus on the next task at hand. There's no point in having a post-mortem and going through every minutiae that's gone wrong the night before. That serves no purpose to anybody. We know what's happened. As players, as fans, as people that work around the club, you've seen it, you've witnessed it. So I think, if there is a debrief, I think it'll be short, sharp, snappy. They'll look at the positives, maybe try and do this, look at that, but they'll be focusing solely on Wolves now, recovering, get the legs back, and start focusing fully on Saturday. So I think it'll be a very light session today. A bit of banter flying around, no doubt, trying to get spirits up, and then fully focused for Saturday. I can't see any other way they're doing it, mate. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and looking at Saturday, Natalie, it's a rarity these days, a traditional 3 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday afternoon. Let's be honest, the atmosphere at these games, and I actually thought Manchester United match last night, pre-game and going into that first half, our fans were incredible. These games on a Saturday 3 p.m, I know we like them for so many reasons, but it has a different feel to it, doesn't it? And our atmosphere is such a weapon for us, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you hear about people that come to the ground who have nothing to do with Brentford, maybe journalists or just coming for a one-off game, who talk about some of those electric nights and how we can create such an atmosphere. And I don't want to say it's necessarily intimidating, but it can be that 12th man factor, can't it? And it can be a little bit hostile, let's say, or certainly puts a bit more pressure, a little bit on the opposition team, let's say. But you're right, an afternoon kickoff, it can be a little bit quieter. It can be a little bit more sedate. So it's up to us as fans to get behind the team as much as we can and to have all sides singing. That's the key thing as well, because we know, obviously, what the West Stand do. And it does trickle through. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't happen across the whole stand or across the whole stadium. But, we do have a job to do. We do have to encourage this team as much as we can. But that also comes from the performance of the team. And if it's not going to plan, unfortunately, it does mean that the fans, can become a bit more muted.
And Rhys, right, that's as a player, when you're on the pitch, is it, people talk about the atmosphere, is that when, say, there's a little mistake will happen and as you're the oppo, and then you feel the crowd get on the back, do you sense an energy in your opposition? Is that how it is? Because I've always tried to work out how that does translate into the players.
100%. Well, in my experience, it does for sure. I mean, it works one of two ways, doesn't it? Yeah, as a player playing at home, you thrive off the atmosphere, and it's palpable, isn't it? If you give the ball away, you've got 17,000 people, so they all grow in unison. You know full well that you've made a mistake. But as an opposition player, you're referring to the old days at Griffin Park. People didn't like coming to Griffin Park, and we've encapsulated the atmosphere, I think, in new surroundings. But adversely, as an opponent, if you're sensing unrest in the home fans, it does give you a little bit of a boost. You kind of look to your teammates and go, "They're on the ropes here, guys." You know what I mean? So, of course, football is a game of opinions. It's subjective, but the more kind of solidarity you can show consistently, it does have a massive impact on the team for sure. In what I've experienced anyway, no one likes getting booed. No one likes making mistakes. No one likes hearing the crowd groan when something goes wrong. We're all human at the end of the day, but I think the key is that the atmosphere, from what I've experienced in the short time that I've been at the club, has been incredible, especially at the new stadium now. And that on Saturday will be vitally important in such an important fixture.
I'm sure everyone will be getting behind that, as I say. Let's look at that game, Natalie, against Wolves. The classic thing to do here is large ball. Basically, you say the manager's name and put ball at the end, and that's their philosophy. Did you say, Stu? Right, good start to the show. I mean, I'm only that far down.
Is it ball?
Ball. We're not playing this game of putting different words in front of the word ball here. Okay. Right. Well, great start from me. Is this a different Wolves team to the one that we saw at the start of the season now? We've seen them go to Old Trafford, dominate, in my opinion, up there. The team we played, it almost felt like a team not quite grasped their identity yet, and maybe the manager hadn't had time to implement his large ball.
Yeah.
Sorry. I said I wouldn't, and I did it.
You said it, and then I giggle like a schoolgirl. Look, absolutely, this is a very different Wolves side. Of course it is, because as you pointed out, it's a new manager, Bruno Lage. No one knew much about him, really. Perhaps not the flashiest of appointments either for Wolves, but they always seem to pick out these little gems like they did with Nuno Espirito Santo and what he did to the club and got them up into the Premier League. And now you've got this Bruno Lage who implements the same style, obviously, in the sense of a 3-5-2 system, let's say, but they were still getting to grips with what he wanted from them. And so I do think this is going to be a very different Wolves side that we're going to face. I think it's even going to be tougher than it was against Manchester United in that second half, say, to make a breakthrough, because they are so sound defensively, so solid. And I think it's just going to be an interesting afternoon. But we have the capabilities of causing them problems. We've done it before against them. As I say, it's a different side, but we can do it. We know we can do it. And that's a confidence that we should take into this game.
Where do you think, Rhys, are the areas we can cause them problems then?
I think you mentioned it off air, Stu. I think the physicality of Ivan caused a lot of problems up at Molineux. I think we saw signs last night that combination between Ivan and Brian was working really well. I think that's certainly something we should be looking to take advantage of for sure. They are sound. You look at Max Kilman, you look at Connor Cody. That old-fashioned, no nonsense, good defending. That's what they're all about. Communication, not particularly quick, not particularly dynamic, but positionally sound. And I think it's a pretty kind of classic matchup, isn't it? When you look at it on paper in that regard, big man, little man, one off the other, and two industrious centre backs. So I think to Natalie's point, Wolves are a different entity to what they were when we played them earlier in the season. But that being said, I think having seen how well we played in spells last night against Manchester United, I think there should be a lot of confidence. And if Thomas sets the team up to be on the front foot again, I think that's where you can catch Wolves cold. I think Wolves will be expecting Brentford to be a little bit low, a little bit down the dumps after some poor results of late. But I think that could work in our favour, to be honest with you. There's some key matchups which I'm sure you'll cover off, but I think we need to make sure we contain their wide players. Hopefully Rico is fit enough to start, because I think he'll be a massively important part of what we do on Saturday. But yeah, listen, it's going to be down to the Beast to show up like they did on Wednesday night and sustain that to get a positive result.
And there's two players. I've got a lot of players in their squad that I'm very fond of. I think they're superb. Maybe they're underrated as a squad, but there's two players that are just Rolls Royces in the middle for me: Moutinho and Ruben Neves. Like, I could watch them all day pass the ball. And we've spoken about this before, Rhys, and it seems to be a big discussion, Brentford, is our combination in midfield. So when you're playing against two players like Neves and Moutinho, do you maybe change your midfield three to deal with those players being ball players, Natalie? Who would you be looking to go in there? Because I thought Matthias, I know he missed a couple of chances. I thought he had a brilliant game.
He did. No, he did. He had a really good game. For him to be getting as advanced as he was and getting those chances, they're big plus points. Yes, we'd have all loved him to have scored some of the numerous chances that he had, but that didn't quite work out. But equally, at least he's in the right place. He's getting those chances. And he is a kind of player that can cause problems when he's on it, let's say. Vitaly Janelt, we're seeing him getting more offensive in some of the stuff that he's doing. He had a couple of chances, and I was desperate for him to score. I really had a hunch that he was going to score last night as well. And then he gets taken off, so I was like, oh no. But never mind. But yeah, so there are players within that midfield that can cause all sorts of problems. We know what Norgard can do, how he can turn over a ball very quickly and lead the attack if needs be from where he is. So there are players that can cause Wolves all sorts of problems. I'm intrigued to see if Adama Traore is going to start this one. It seems as though recently he's been coming off the bench and being a super sub, as he did obviously last time against Southampton as well. So to see him up against Rico Henry, as you pointed out, Rhys, if he's fit, that'll be really intriguing as a battle. But yeah, there's lots. I think what they'll do, Wolves, is they'll try and force us to play out wide, because that's, as you pointed out, they've got some really important players in midfield. So I think they'll try and force us out wide as much as they can. It'll just be interesting to see who comes out on top. But obviously, I'm wanting Brentford to win. Desperate for Brentford to win, actually. But yeah, we'll see. But there's lots of really interesting matchups, I think, that could happen on the day.
Right. Look, we are running tight for time, but it would be impossible for me not to ask you this, Rhys, as you are a former fullback. How do you mark Adama Traore?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Stu. My hammy would probably be quite tight on the morning of the game, and upon pulling up short in the warm up, I probably wouldn't take the field of play to start. If I'm being honest with you, no. Listen, I think the key for playing against Traore, in my opinion, is to not give him space. I know it sounds very basic, But what frustrates me with fullbacks that play against him is they give him the opportunity to touch and turn. The minute he faces you up, that's when you're in trouble, because there aren't many people as quick as Rico that could potentially deal with him. But for me, it's putting pressure on his first touch. Your starting position is vitally important. Not being too narrow, being able to get to him in time that you can put pressure on his first touch. Because the minute he's set and he squares you up, then you've got problems. And I think starting position vitally important. Communication from the centre back to the fullback to make sure that the distances are right. And again, backing yourself, making you know what he wants to try and do. He wants to go on the outside 9 times out of 10 if he's on the right hand side. Back yourself, get your body in a position that you can stop him to dictate where you want him to go effectively. And I think all these things are easily said from the comfort of my living room. But the players that we have, Rico Henry, prime example, is one of the best in the business, in my opinion. And I think Rico will have done his due diligence on Traore, and he's more than capable of dealing with him. But that's how I would approach it. Pressurise his first touch, don't let him turn, and kick him at the very first opportunity. Hard.
I think that's where we're actually going to leave it, which is interesting because we have run out of time. Unfortunately, we are only going to 15 minutes, and look, it is literally just a pint. I've barely actually started mine, but hopefully we've started some talking points for people to think about ahead of the game on Saturday. Thank you both so much for joining us in our first ever pre-match Pint with London Pride. Things to look out for also on our YouTube channel this weekend, everyone. Pontus Jansson, he's answered your fan questions. That is superb. There's one superb question because obviously someone asked him, is he actually going to head a brick if it's thrown at him? So keep an eye out for that tomorrow night. Like we said, we've got to bring that midweek night game atmosphere to the Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs. It's going to be a huge game on Saturday, but we've got every chance after that first half performance. We know what we can do. So let's get behind the boys. Thanks again, guys, and come on you Reds.